This is Vermont Chill. You're listening to Deep Look, and we're going to
Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor, and the college regional championships are donezo. We've got our 72 teams qualified to the D1 and D3 college championships, Keith. And as always, it was dramatic. It was exciting.
It was. You have to kind of read between the lines because I think the results are somewhat chalky, which I predicted prior to coming in. Maybe that makes me more likely to interpret the results to be chalky, but not the most super of Sundays, as far as Super Sundays go, but still some drama. And it's always, I love that the West Coast always finishes with a little drama because they're always the last to go. So even when you're winding down on Sunday evening on the East Coast, you're still looking at Twitter like, wow, is this really happening?
It's like 7 o'clock on the East Coast, and you're like, wow, those teams are still playing for a bid right now. Dang.
I know. In my head, I'm picturing they're like playing. It's dark outside, but in reality, it's 4 o'clock where they are, 3 o'clock.
Well, Keith, you were at the New England Men's Regional Championship, split regions for the men and the women. Sadly, for sure, because good drama in both, but. Tell us a little bit about what you saw at the New England Men's Regional. Of course, just 2 bids for 5 bid earning teams and 6 top 25 teams. I mean, just a crazy stacked region. At the end of the day, it is Brown and Vermont, arguably the chalk, qualifying out of New England Men's. Keith, what did you see on the ground?
I got to say that I saw mostly what I expected. The ways that it happened weren't necessarily exactly what I expected. I mean, I got there and it's the pre-semi round of the backdoor bracket, I guess, or the semifinal. Yeah, the pre-semi round of the backdoor bracket, I think is right. And so UMass is coming back against McGill. They were down like 8-2 to McGill. And they're charging back into the game. Like that's what I arrived to. Not exactly how you script that to go. And McGill gets the big upset there. And then as if that wasn't weird enough, they go into their game against Northeastern, the game to go. And Northeastern looks like they're going to bagel them. That was the most bagely unbageled game I've seen in a long time. I mean, there's just
it wasn't competitive.
Not even close. I mean, if I didn't happen to be near the scores that McGill got, I would have thought they didn't score. You know what I mean? Like Northeastern in complete control, and Northeastern just dominated Tufts in the morning, which I also wouldn't have predicted. Tufts is a good team. Thought they could run with Northeastern, but not in that setting. So surprising results. Vermont gives Brown a good chase, but that game went about what I would have expected. Brown, the more polished outfit. And then, you get that a great game to go. Pretty big scoreline difference, but Northeastern was pretty competitive throughout. Eventually, Vermont just overwhelming them to take that second bid.
It's interesting. I think it shows you, we talked a lot about the schedule of this tournament. And remember, originally, Vermont was supposed to be in a pool with Brown. And if they lose, then they have to play the 3 backdoor games or whatever it was. And then they ended up changing the schedule, which put Vermont away from Brown into the pool with UMass. And they get the wins that they needed to get on Saturday in order to qualify to the final. And I think that was a big deal. And I think it's part of the reason that they won. Although, looking at the scores, looking at what we've seen from this team so far this season, I think it's very clear to see that this was the second best team in the New England region. That said, I think it helps a lot not to have to play through that backdoor games, because look at what happened, right? McGill comes out. They know they have this game against UMass that they really got to come out firing. They got to come out hungry and smart, and they do. And UMass comes out super flat, and it's not enough, right? So they go down so big that they can't end up coming back in the game. And I think, expectations and the mental approach is a big part of how all of this plays out. Because, UMass comes into that game, I think they probably think they're pretty going to comfortably beat McGill. And then they don't. And then McGill has this insane upset win, and they're so energized, and oh my gosh, and then they have the big letdown. I mean, this is classic college ultimate, right? So they come out against a Northeastern team that's arguably not as good as UMass, and they just get their doors blown off. And then we basically see the same thing happening to Northeastern a little bit in the next game, whereas Brown, is coming off of a game, or Vermont's coming off of a game where at halftime they're saying, let's phone it in, right? We're gonna get ready for the next game, and their mental focus was already on that next game, not on the games that they had to win all the way leading up to the game to go. And I think that's a big deal. But at the end of the day, the score lines, it's not like they eked out wins. Like, they pretty comfortably won all of their games except the loss to Brown.
They outplayed Northeastern in that game. I know the scoreboard reflects that, but it was fairly windy. Although that was probably the least windy game. I mean, there was a point in the back part of the second half where the wind pretty much died down, and I think Vermont took advantage to start to pull away there. But it was pretty windy in the morning, especially, and had a big impact on the games. I think it might have been even windier on Saturday. So, that I think was part of what exacerbated how good Brown looked. I mean, Jock Nissen it's a wind ignorer. He was a big difference maker in their games. But like you said, Vermont looked confident. They out executed Northeastern. They played stronger defense. Northeastern looked good at points. It wasn't like 15-8 feels like bigger than the actual deficit felt in a way, but mostly once Vermont grabbed control of the game, I think Northeastern just eventually their body language kind of gave out. They did everything they could to abate the disadvantage of having to go through the back door by blowing everybody out. I mean, they how many more points did they really end up playing than Vermont? And while Vermont may have mentally checked out in the second half of the Brown game, I mean, they were still sending out pretty much the same lines. I mean, they were going out there. They weren't resting the starters, so to speak, at least not to my eyes. They're pretty deep though, so they don't ask too much of any one person anyway. So Vermont, impressive. I gotta say, I'm sad if your seeding projections come true, because they would make a juicy game pick. They look like they have the goods.
Yeah, I mean, you can check out my seeding predictions over on UltiWorld. I have them going at the 6 behind Georgia. It's arguable that you could put them lower. They did have a loss to Michigan. I think you could put them as low as 8. Have Michigan move up to 7 and Cal Poly move up to 6. But I really don't see them falling past 8, Keith. The results are good, and they have a win against NC State that's going to keep them up likely in a 2 seed. So I think they're going to get a pool 2 seed somewhere. They're going to have a tough game against whoever the 1 seed in their pool is. But they look like a team that deserves to be a 2 seed.
I want them at 8 or below for the game, but I kind of hate picking 8s anyway, so I kind of want them at 9 or below. The 8's in such a bad spot. They got to play the 1 seed, and then they have 2 teams that are closely seeded right behind them. It's not good, not a good spot. But they have the tools. I mean, they have a team where they have a variety of players with solid skill level. They have a D-line that can be super aggressive. Declan Kervick, the freshman who has a huge role in their D-line, just a real block getter and has the green light after a turn. I mean, it's wild how aggressive they let him be as a thrower after turnovers. Maybe it was because of the wind, but he's certainly got to be a candidate for freshman of the year based on what I saw this weekend.
Well, we're going to hear from the Vermont captains coming up next, right here on Deep Look. More regionals talk after the interview. We'll be right back. Joining us now on Deep Look are the captains of UVM, Vermont Chill, Reed Browning, Johnny Sickles, and Turner Allen. Guys, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, congratulations on qualifying for the college championships. And before we even talk about the games and the wins, I want to know from you all, how were you feeling in the lead up to this tournament where you had just 2 bids for all of these very, very good teams, and you kind of knew this for months coming into the event and you started to see how good these other teams were. I mean, Northeastern beat you at MLC. What was going through your minds as you were getting ready for regionals?
Yeah, it was definitely the most unique and most difficult prep we've had to do for a tournament, because one of the things we chose to focus on the weeks coming up to this tournament was unity, because with the 2-bid situation, you got to focus on yourselves. You can't, at that point, you can't worry about who you're playing. You got to just focus on your game and play and show up to that tournament and play your game and just hope the results are going to go your way. So that was our main focus, I think, going up to this tournament, which was a little bit different than past tournaments.
Yeah, and I also just say that, like, we really had no expectations. We knew we'd go out there and play our best, and whatever happened, happened.
I would say I personally believe that we were earning that bid. I never had a doubt in my mind that that was ours. So obviously we had great competition. UMass, Northeastern, Tufts, they were all tough games. They're great teams, but I knew for a fact that we were the best out of those teams. And it was just a matter of playing to our potential, and everyone stepped up.
I wish we had known that fact prior to, so we could make sure that we get the right picks. But
we did get the right picks, Keith.
I mean, we did an end. We did the end. But I'm the one who looks like a fool when you go back and listen to it. But I mean, you're coming off of what on paper looks like probably the best season in the program's history leading into this tournament. But you're going up against these teams that are from programs that have been there before. We've seen UMass make deep runs at nationals. We've seen Northeastern come up over these past couple of years. Obviously, even the likes of Tufts, some of the other teams that you had to compete against have been there and done that. How do you build up the confidence in your team knowing, hey, we can go out and beat these guys when it matters?
I think it started in our first tournament at Queen City. This is a brand new team with so many new components that we didn't have the past couple of years. And we showed up to that tournament not really knowing what to expect, and just playing against top teams like NC State and UNC, and just seeing how we compared, we were like, whoa, this season is going to be crazy, because this is the beginning and we are hanging with these guys. And then we just took off from there.
I think that first game against NC State, that was our first game of the spring season that really set the tone for what it was going to be. We completely outworked them, out-talented them, and they were 8th at nationals last year in the fall. So coming off that win, we were like, we're legit, and we all knew that.
What's been the key to the growth of this program? Now, there's an article up on UltiWorld about the Vermont teams and the growth at UVM. But I'm curious to hear from you all. How have you gotten to this point? Because we've seen Vermont playing better over the last few seasons. Obviously, we haven't really had a normal college season since 2019. But you come up a little bit short at regionals, and I think a lot of people probably looked at this year's team and said, they had nice results, but maybe they picked you to come up short again to a team like UMass, that's been there and has some flashy names. So what has it taken to get to this point where now, you're very clearly one of the top team? I mean, you're probably project to a quarterfinals team right now at nationals.
Yeah. So going into the season, I don't think we'd ever beaten Northeastern, Tufts, or UMass ever in our history. And I mean, that's kind of hard to say with the lack of, you don't really know. But in my memory, we've never beaten any of those 3 teams. And I think really it all kind of started the year before I joined the program. So that would be the year 2018. That was a year that players like Ryan Dinger, who's no longer with our team, but also Walden Ing, who's a staple of our O-line, Aaron Winmore, who's a coach of our team who played for Triforce. We started getting these really talented players from good high school programs, and from there, we just kept adding talent year after year after year. And those guys really set a tone that we were able to maintain and elevate season after season. And also, I mean, we have a lot of really good New England players on this team, but the core of this team is Vermont talent. It all comes from the same like 2 or 3 years of Vermont high school ultimate that I played against Reed in high school, and me and Kuchan and Eli, we're just out there working, like shoveling fields together and like learning how to work hard and learning how to play just throughout the winters. We kind of taught ourselves how to work hard and taught ourselves how to play well. And then once we got to college, we actually had a competition to really like hone our skills against.
Yeah, I also think just those 2 COVID years, we were putting together this team, and we didn't really know like who we were adding each year, and we didn't know what it was going to look like, but we decided in the past couple of years, we were like, when we come back, this is going to be the year that we put everything on the table. We work as hard as we can, and we stepped up into leadership roles in order to get the team to that place that we wanted to be, and it worked out, which feels great.
And also all the Amherst freshmen, and we just kind of created a little pipeline and all kind of started that 2018 year. And really grateful for the time and energy those guys put in to lay the foundation for the season.
I think the difference now, like we have this core of very talented players, but there's like, I think the shift is the belief and the work that we've done all season, all year. It's like really different from like our freshman year. Very, very different team culture. And our priorities we're in a very different place than that year.
When you're making that shift, when you're making the cultural shift that Johnny's talking about, there's kind of a moment I feel like where you have to buy in kind of on faith. Like, okay, I'm going to go to these extra track workouts. Maybe there's a couple players on the team who don't want to make that commitment, don't want to make the time commitment. And they're like, hey, I guess we can't play this year. There's those kind of challenges that arise when you make that shift. And a lot of college teams, I think, struggle to get through that change and like, okay, we're really going to put the cards on the table and go all in here. Was there ever a moment in the beginning of the year where y'all weren't sure, like, okay, is this going to be what we want it to be? Like, is this going to be worth it? Or are we potentially doing all this for something that's not going to be worth our time? Was there ever that doubt?
I honestly don't think so. The minute this group got together, you could just tell how much everybody loved this sport and how much everybody wanted to put in the time to be good at this sport. And that combined with just how much we gelled as like a friend group and family, I think it was just immediate. You could just tell that everybody wanted to buy in, and then it just took taking the time to actually get out there and do that, to hit those extra track workouts, to go out and play pickup on our off days, and
yeah. And I think that a large part of that too is just like most of our hardest working players are our freshman class. Like they matched the energy we were trying to set instantly. There was no like having to work them up to like the expectations we had for them. They bought in, and those are the guys that were honestly working out the most probably, and were coming to like everything they could, playing goaltee with the women's team, like all these little things that just like, I don't know, it feels really special just how much everyone on this team cares. And also we had, I think, 3 players quit from the fall to the end of the spring. And I think that's a very hard thing to have happen, but also it was best for them. So it's kind of something that happens as you make that you start to escalate up.
Yeah, I think the fall was good for that because it gave us a little bit of a head start into creating this team and this culture, which in past years you don't have that almost like a preseason.
Let's talk about regionals. You kind of made it not very dramatic. I think there was a lot of anticipation that this was going to be some insane Sunday where, like, who knows what's going to happen. And, you obviously lost to Brown, but you sort of dominated everybody else. You beat UMass 11-8 on Saturday. Then you beat Tufts 13-7. You beat Northeastern 15-8 in the game to go. So what was the biggest challenge on the field during this weekend? I mean, your closest game that was not the loss to Brown was against UMass. Was that one feel like the real tester?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of friends on that team, and we have kind of developed a little rivalry in the last season and a half against them. So that game's always, it feels different. There's a level of intensity, there's a level of like pressure that they bring that didn't really exist in the other games, I'd say, maybe other than Brown. But I mean, we got off to a hot start in that game. Our D-line did the thing they do in every game we played this season, which is just absolutely rolling a break train through a team, like about in the first like 8 points or so. And then at that point, like they just never really able to get back because,
yeah. I think UMass was definitely the toughest challenge, and like the talent they have, and like with the rivalry that we've developed, it's like the intensity of those games really elevate everyone's play. So I definitely think they were the toughest challenge, but I think we worked harder than them, and I think we just like outclassed them, honestly. They're great players, but like I never had a doubt that we were winning that game.
How did you?
Yeah, I also think.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I think the Northeastern game was a great test to our team coming off of a loss from Brown. That's always like very difficult to come off a loss and then figure out how to play your best frisbee after that. And that I think was the best we've played all season in that game, on both sides of the ball. And so that was the game that I was most proud of and most impressed with, just being able to come off that loss and just play lights out at the Northeastern game.
I think most of the time in the Northeastern game we were playing against ourselves. We knew we could give more every point.
Yeah.
Like, that's something we talk about in almost every huddle. Is just like, we have more to give. We know there's next level.
Yeah, if you watch the film, I think it's one of the first 2 or 3 points, our D-line just starts hitting bids on every single under. Some of them were like 2 feet away from the disc, but we just flipped the switch and we put the pressure on, and after that point, the whole energy of the game shifted our way.
Yeah, I think like you guys outside looking in to this weekend, you're like, what's gonna happen? What, like, anything could happen, but we knew what the result was gonna be going into the weekend, and like, I don't know, I feel like I've said it a bunch, but it was that belief that I think carried us through.
However, you did not win the region. That went to Brown.
No.
How did you approach that game, given the fact that they'd beaten you pretty soundly a couple times already in the season, and you knew how good they were going to be?
Yeah, we definitely, like, to start the game, like, we were going 100%. And everyone's playing hard. They had ended up going up a few breaks, and like they capitalized on every turnover and play very tight defense. And their offense is just very efficient. At halftime, we met with the coaches and we're like, what are we gonna do? Do we want to go all out for the rest of this game, try to win, or what?
I think something about that game too that is something I'm really proud of about that game is that in this tournament is that we never crossed over once, and I think that's really a testament to our depth as a team and our skill that we're able to just run pretty standard lines throughout the whole tournament without having to cross over some of our best players onto O or onto D, and we're able to get the results we want. And that's something that I liked about the Brown game, is that we really were able to open up and just play our like 2 different D lines and our O line. So like it was just good reps for everyone in the program. And I'm just happy we didn't get absolutely smoked again. At least we were within a couple more points.
I think it was our best game against them. But they know how to take care of the ball on turnovers and convert. And their their O-line defense is pretty incredible. Like that is something that is so strong for them and is what has been winning them games because they're able to turn the ball over on offense and then get it back every single time. And it's really difficult to convert on them. And it's something we are constantly trying to get creative with to figure out how to break.
One more question, and I'll let Keith jump back in here. Are they the best team you've played this season?
Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, easily.
By a long shot, too.
And you played UNC.
Yeah, we played them early in the season.
Yeah, it's hard to say. We'd definitely like to see UNC again at Nationals.
You may get your shot. So you may get a chance. You mentioned going into that Northeastern game, coming off a loss, and how that's challenging. And I was kind of concerned. Y'all come out, they get a huge sky from I think Simon Carapella, and then they punch in a break right after that. It's 2-0. They're coming off 2 dominating wins. I mean, they were crushing people on Sunday, and y'all are coming off a loss. You go to give up a break pretty much to start the game, and I was like, oh, are we seeing the classic backdoor loss? Like you lose in the final, you go into the back door and you can't recover. But y'all managed to turn it around. Do you feel like there's a specific point in that game that was the turning point for you?
Walden Facebook.
Yeah, I have one that really stands out in my mind. Actually, I have 2. The point, I think it was 2-2, and Reed mentioned it earlier, where our defensive intensities reached a new level. We were on their backs the whole point. They had to march it down the field after a couple. I think we turned it a couple times too, but every time they got the ball, it was defender right in the back. If they weren't bidding, they were getting the mark on right away. We just could tell that they could feel us there, and that led to I think some drops later in the game. And 2, when our O-line handler ate a huck to the face at the front cone. Yeah. Well, as soon as that happened, I was like, we're not losing this game.
You could definitely feel the energy shift, which is something that I haven't felt yet this season. That switch is it's something that you can, when you're playing the game, you can tell. And it felt good.
What are your hopes for nationals? I to be honest, I don't know if Vermont has the Vermont men's team been to nationals in the past. Do you guys know? If
30
so,
years ago.
Yeah, right. Long time ago.
Yeah, last appearance was 1993, I believe.
I get the sense, though, that this is not a happy to be there kind of a team. So what are you hoping to do at the national championships?
Yeah, I mean, going into the season, our goal was to get to nationals. And now that we're here, it's like we're not satisfied yet. We want to go there and we want to make a deep run. We're trying to, I think we're going to go there and we're going to win a lot of games, and it's going to be pretty cool.
I just want to play our best. I think if we do that, we're going to end some seasons.
Yeah, I mean, just what these guys said, I really have no expectations. It's hard to kind of even wrap my mind around it still. It still hasn't really sat in. But I think we're a really, really good team. And I think that we can definitely win some games, and maybe, we'll see where it goes, see where we end up.
Yeah.
Could definitely be up there, though.
It'll be interesting. Charlie did his projected seeding, which I'll always have Charlie's back on this. Tends to be pretty accurate. Not always nailing it, but rarely a big miss. And Vermont's pretty high in the seedings. Are you prepared to, instead of being the underdog, have a target on your back potentially in nationals?
Yeah, it's a new spot for us, so it's going to be interesting to come in as a high seed because we're used to being the underdogs. That's where we like to be. So it's going to be definitely a different energy going into it.
I don't think the mentality really changes for us, though. At the end of the day, we're playing whoever we're facing up against, and we're going to give them everything we got. Like we have every game this season.
All right, guys. Well, best of luck in Milwaukee, and we look forward to seeing how it all unfolds. I guess my last question is, what's the future look like for this team? I know I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, really, but do you have a lot of seniors who are graduating, and it's going to be kind of a rebuild, or does this feel like you're establishing yourselves as a team that's going to be going to nationals on a regular basis at this point?
Vermont's going to be good for a long time. Trust that.
This really is just the beginning for us. Not a lot of players graduating. Really strong freshman class. I don't really see us going anywhere, leaving the nationals conversation anytime soon.
Yeah, our freshman and sophomore classes are some of the most dedicated Frisbee players I've ever met. So I can't imagine they're gonna come back in future years and let that slip away from them.
All right, guys.
I honestly think this is the worst Vermont team for a while.
This is the what team?
To be honest, this is going to be the worst Vermont team.
Oh, okay.
For a long time.
Okay.
I truly believe that.
All right. Well, hopefully you can set a high bar for the future teams to clear. Good luck at nationals. We'll see you there.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
See you there.
We appreciate y'all helping us beat us in the fields too. Always appreciated.
Reed Browning, Johnny Sickles, Turner Allen with us here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Deep Look. Thanks so much to the captains from Vermont for stopping by. Keith, that is a confident bunch. The way that they were talking about the tournament, it made it sound like they won the region. But, I think when your sights are set on making nationals and then you go out there and you don't back into it, right? You really dominate everybody except the number one team in the country. I think confidence is deserved.
They could ostensibly be the second best team in the country. Who knows? I mean, you lose to Brown. There's no shame in that. Almost everyone that Brown's played has done that, except for one exception. So, yeah, you're right. I think they earned a little bit of confidence. They play with that confidence. I got to say that I was impressed that they were able to come out of a 2-0 hole in that game to go against, a team probably with a bigger reputation than theirs.
So let's turn our attention over to the women's side of the New England region, and Vermont and Tufts qualifying without a whole lot of drama. And the backdoor bid, Keith, the game was decided 5-4. 5-4. Northeastern beats Brown in just an absolutely grinding, windy weekend, and they end up going. It's kind of crazy. Northeastern goes 2-3 on the weekend. They lose to Brown early. They lose by 3 to Vermont. Then they beat Dartmouth. They get blown out by Vermont, and then they beat Brown 5-4 to claim the last bid. So a very interesting regional setup with the 3 bids and not that many teams. And ultimately, I think it's not a big surprise to see Northeastern qualify, but man, 5-4, crazy.
I think there were 2 games, both by Cuffs, where a team reached 13 on the weekend. I mean, the wind was clearly the biggest winner down at that. It was a dominant performance by the wind, and it led to some really depressed scores. I imagine that some of these games, look at these 1-point games that were the flip. I hate the phrase the game was decided by the flip, because chances are you had chances to break in that game that you didn't convert.
I would think you're probably right in a 5-4 game.
Or in any game, any game where there are no breaks, chances are your team had a chance to get a break or could have generated a break opportunity or something. Anyway, I don't like the phrase necessarily decided by the flip, but I get the idea here, and I imagine that some of these games were decided by the flip. So you end up with Tufts over Vermont. I'm not a shock, but I think Vermont had the stronger season. And maybe something to keep an eye on, although both of the teams were locked into nationals. So I can imagine after a grinding, windy weekend, not wanting to really go all out.
No bailouts. No bailouts. 8-4, Keith. 8-4. No, that's a very strong win from Tufts.
But you get down to that game to go. There's double game point. I saw it somewhere on Twitter. I saw the actual conclusion to that point bouncing around in video form. And clearly, a great relief for Northeastern to survive a tough region. BU and Brown proved to be pretty good challengers, although I gotta say, someone tweeted at Ultiworld Saturday night from Brown, or no, they tweeted a Deep Look, excuse me, which is why I feel like I can address this. They tweeted a Deep Look. They said something along the lines of like, Deep Look, what did you have to say about us? Like, catch us in semis. I was like, oh no, that's a jinx if I've ever heard of one. Sure enough. Yeah. You gotta hold the chirps until you win the games,
And listen, I respect the chirps, but that's a premature chirp. That's an early chirp. That's a dangerous chirp.
You can't spike it before you're in the end zone.
That's a dangerous chirp. But hey, look, Brown's a team to keep an eye on in the future. I think that that's a very promising set of results for them. And look, it's got to be hard to lose a game to 5-4. It's just that hurts because it's like this is not a normal. These are not normal conditions. Now, they weren't normal conditions for their first game either that they won against Northeastern. So I don't know. Make of it what you will. It's windy. Everybody's dealing with the wind the same way. So. Pretty interesting stuff. And, I think these are going to be tough outs, these Northeast teams. We haven't really had a lot of chances to see what's Vermont going to be able to do this year? Did they go to a Northwest Challenge? They did. They lost by 1 to North Carolina and they lost by 1 to Washington. And, then you got Tufts, who has the really good start to the year at Queen City, a little more up and down at Stanford Invite. But frankly, mostly what we've seen is that these teams both look like quarterfinals locks with semifinals potential.
I mostly agree. We've seen a little bit of inconsistency, I think, from Tufts in particular. So I'm not quite ready to jump all the way on the bandwagon, I guess.
The only loss I question for Tufts is to FSU.
Yeah, that's fair. It's one. But I was high on Tufts coming into the season. I still think they're a strong threat to make quarterfinals. Don't get me wrong. Both these teams are. And Northeastern, I don't really know what to make of them. I just feel like we have not seen it on a consistent level for them. But Claire Stewart's really good. Can certainly drive offense. We'll see what she can bring in nationals. I think there's going to be a big weight on her shoulders.
All right, let's keep it moving here. Atlantic Coast, your qualifiers in the men's division, UNC, NC State, and William and Mary. Over in the women's division, it was UNC, Virginia, and William and Mary. So the double William and Mary qualify, both getting upsets. Nobody picking William and Mary to make national. I shouldn't say nobody. I'm sure that fans of the team picked them, but they weren't really a team that was heavily in the conversation. And maybe that's wrong, Keith. We've seen particularly the men's team have a lot of success in the past, and they both end up qualifying. Look, the William and Mary men's team smacked Maryland twice. Okay, I am done with this Maryland team. I'm done, Keith. Every year, people are telling me how great this Maryland team is going to be. They may even have some good results, like they go to Eastern Sunday. They look pretty good. How about this Maryland team? They're looking good. They do not bring it at regionals. Yes, they had the 1 year where they won like 7,000 games in a row to go to nationals. That was very cool. Congratulations to them. Put the poster on the wall. But since then, what have we seen from this team? Underperformance after underperformance. I've had enough. I'm not picking this team again. Like I said, I'm never picking against Wisconsin to not qualify to nationals. Never doing it. I may just never pick this Maryland team again. I mean, they are on the out list for me for some time.
In the doghouse, I like this absolutist picks, Charlie. I like this side of you. But don't tell this in the fields, guys. Though we want them to keep picking Maryland.
Well, we rolled them, Keith. I mean, it really wasn't even a contest. Like the only teams we didn't get right, it feels like to me, were the teams that were like big surprises completely, and there weren't that many of them this weekend. We ended up dominating the contest, and I'm not sure if that's actually a good thing, as now our mothers are going to get letters from Pat and Tad.
Can I pick Pat to send letters to my mom?
I don't really. We haven't really worked out the logistics of all
The
that.
details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think allowing them each to write one card seems like a fair compromise. But yeah, that's gonna be interesting.
We did quite well in the picks competition relative to who we had to go against, and that's all you can do, right? Is win the games in front of you. But back to the AC, William and Mary. Look, if I'm gonna counter chirp Brown, let me give William and Mary their plaudits. Their men's team quality chirp right back at us. We said earlier in the year, I think it was me actually. I don't remember which one of us were. Who's even on that team this year? No, that was to be fair. That was in February. But a great chirp, and it came with a video, a highlight video. Come on, that's quality chirping. I'm into that. But I'm not going to sleep on this team. The men's team in particular going into internationals. Women's team, I'm impressed. They got. I do think that the back end of the AC having 3 bids pretty helpful. Don't get me wrong. But they've lost some good players over the past couple of years that I thought might have been able to get this team to that level. So for them to be able to step it up. Even losing some key players from last year's team, impressive. So congrats to them.
I mean, look, they won the games that they had to win. I'm
pretty sure they're a first time qualifier.
They were back to the men's team really quick. This team got blown away by NC State and UNC. I think it shows you that what kind of a gulf there was between those top 2 teams and then the rest of this region. But they took care of business in their other games. And then, on the women's side, I mean, App State didn't really materialize, Keith. UVA did what we expected, which is they come through and take that second bid. And William and Mary, welcome to the show. There's not that many programs that send both teams to nationals. That is a fact worth highlighting. Congrats to William and Mary.
I don't know if I'm ready to say, NC State is some big size away. Although it's kind of a weird setup. I mean, they've really almost lost to Duke in semifinals, which, would have brought back all the old NC State memes. But they nearly lost to Duke, and then they nearly beat UNC. So I don't know what to make of NC State on the men's side right now.
I mean, I think Duke is just good, and
I think so too. I mean, they beat Maryland.
I think. Then they end up losing to them in the third place bracket semis. But I think, having heard a little bit about the team, they were missing some people and probably didn't have the legs to keep it going that whole day. It's too bad because I feel like they're a team that arguably they were the third most talented team behind UNC and NC State. It's arguable. Does
this all tell us don't overfocus on conference results? I'm thinking about teams that did well or poorly at conferences, and everybody's getting all excited. Liberty beats UVA in AC women's.
Pure noise.
BU and Brown beat Northeastern or whatnot in New England. If you're in conference, the late conference, already qualified games, I'm ready to mostly count that as noise at this point.
Yep. But, hey, look at this William and Mary team on the women's side. They beat NC State, Georgetown. They get blown up by UNC. They lose big to Virginia as well. But, they clearly showed that they were the next best team. Beat App State 15-10.
I don't doubt
it. NC State again. So, hey, we'll see. I mean, I think, it goes to show you, this is a region that wouldn't have gotten 3 bids. They just wouldn't have gotten 3 bids.
No.
And
although we've seen weirder bid situations even during a traditional year. I mean, we've seen regions like this get a 3rd bid.
But I mean, this William and Mary team went 2-4 at Queen City. They went 2-4 at Bonanza. It's not like they had big regular season results. But you know what? Show up at regionals. Play good at regionals.
So that's the recipe.
That's the recipe. All right, let's move on. Northwest. This was pretty crazy, Keith. Washington really tried to not make nationals. I mean, they really gave it their best shot. And, despite themselves qualified. Let's tip the cap to Utah State for not only qualifying again, but winning this region. And it's quite something to see this Utah State team. How good are they going to be? This is the big question. That they haven't lost, Keith. How good is this team going to be?
They're going to be, I think, one of the big mysteries. We always have this kind of team, not always, but we often have this kind of team when we go to nationals. Team that didn't play a lengthy schedule or didn't play a ton of competition, but won all their games, and then showed up at regionals and did okay. I mean, this is not the most impressive regional slate that Utah State won. All the credit to winning. I came into this saying like, hey, I think that they could be the second best team in the region. I think they could be legit. I think they can go to nationals and win games, but they didn't win any of these games they won one game maybe Oregon State by 5 and Whitman by 6, but they play fairly close with Utah and UBC. They don't play Washington. They don't play Oregon. Yes. This is not exactly they won 4 games to win the region.
Their path was Whitman, Utah, UBC, Oregon State. Then that crowned them Northwest champs. I mean, that was the games in front of them. But you must admit,
you can't play any other ones.
It's a pretty dream-like scenario to win the region with that slate. No Oregon, no Washington, no Western Washington. Like, how about that?
Although maybe playing Washington would have been a good thing, apparently. Like, I don't know. What do we do with Washington, man? Unfortunately for Utah State, Washington somehow took over the story.
Yeah, I mean, so let's look at what happened to this Washington team. They drop a game in pool play to Oregon State. Okay, so that just completely throws things off. Now they missed the first place bracket entirely. So they got to go in all the way deep in the backdoor bracket. They get an easy win over Whitman, no problem. They beat Western Washington handily. Then, I mean, they're up against UBC and have to come back and win that game. I mean, they were down late, Keith. I mean, it was looking like that could be curtains for them without even getting to sniff the game to go. And then they end up coming back. They win that game 13-11, and then they play an absolute grinder against Oregon, as it should be. But in this case, this is for the second to last bid. This is the game to go. And so they win that game 11-10, and then they get the rematch against Oregon State, and you just knew Oregon State was going to get beaten this game. You just knew it. And they did. They lost 13-7. It wasn't close. But, I mean, really, Washington survives. And I have no confidence in this team at Nationals, Keith. None.
Oh, my God.
None.
I've heard tell of this team being shorthanded, them being injured or whatnot. But they had 5 guys, 6 guys get votes in our top 20 player rankings. And still one of their players said LOL about it. How good are you? How good is this team? Somebody tell me. If they had flamed out in the backdoor semis at regionals, that was going to be
to UBC. I mean, it's one thing if you lose to Oregon, but oh boy. I mean, but
they would have gotten the same chirps Cut's getting. That was close. But you know what? They still won most of their games. They lose that one to Oregon State, and shout out to Oregon State, man. They're going to be buzzy. They're going to be buzzy. That team is young. They're talented. I don't know if they're ever going to pull it off, but they're going to be a scary team in that region for a couple of years.
I mean, they beat Washington 13-9 in pool play. It's not like it was some cheapie. Like that. They got 2
win. U20 guys on that team.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to be scary.
Definitely a team to watch.
That's for sure.
A lot of good young players on that team. So at the end of the day, Washington qualifies. On the women's side, not nearly as much drama. The Washington getting it done, beating UBC. Those two teams clearly separating from the pack. And I feel like, UW kind of back on the right track after taking some surprise losses earlier this season.
They're a strong team. I think they were kind of building the depth through the regular season. I think they felt like we've got the insulation. We know how good we can be. So let's focus on building our roster. They got to extend the process part for them a little bit longer, all the way up to this nationals window. So I am optimistic of how good this team could be at nationals. Sometimes those teams don't flipping the switch right, or they can't quite flip the switch at the last second. But UBC is, I think, going to be pretty good. All their results say that they're good. They're a quarterfinals quality team. So to beat them 12-9 in the final is a good result for Washington too.
Yeah, I mean, UBC, good resume. I mean, crushing win over Stanford, close loss to Carleton, 15-10 loss to UNC, and then a pair of losses to Washington. Otherwise, they've beaten everybody, which includes a 15-13 win over Carleton. So, yeah, I like the chances of this UBC team to get into the bracket at nationals. Outside shot at semis probably. So fun to see what happens with them. Let's move on. OV, Pitt and Ohio State qualifying, and Pittsburgh qualifying in the women's division. Really pretty much chalk here, Keith. I don't really. This was one of the more predictable and I guess dull regions this weekend.
Light on the drama. Really not. I think not really any upset bids here to come at these qualifying teams. All the drama in the OV was about the logistics of the tournament having to be moved, like the day before it was going to be played or something like that. You got teams dropping out. I'm sure it was a nightmare for everybody involved in both the planning and the leaders of the teams trying to make everything work. But they managed to get in their games. They managed to play, and the best teams won pretty comfortably.
Yep. I mean, the what was the first place finals bracket here? Okay. Yeah. So in the women's side, Ohio getting to the final. Pretty cool to see that.
I wonder if they're going to have staying power. I mean, yeah, it's just it's basically from the fall into the spring. Like they've had a couple good tournaments in a row. So a couple good regionals in a row, I should say. You get a nationals qualification out of that. I wonder what this will do for their program because it could really boost the program. We've seen teams make nationals and then kind of ride that to further success. So a team I'm very curious about going into the next season into 2023 to see like how good can this team be?
Ohio State taking care of business on the men's side. Got a 13-8 win over Case Western in the game to go. Pittsburgh easily winning the final 13-7. So that brings us to our final region. It was the Southwest, and it was certainly interesting. Keith, you know what's great is we just barely missed. We had UCSD and ultimately coming out on top. They lose to Santa Barbara and end up finishing third because they lose to Stanford in the 2-3 placement game. But Davis does get in on the men's side, SLO and Cal qualifying in that order. And I mean, I think the six best teams ended up at nationals out of this region. UCLA on the men's side played well, but they were a step behind Cal. And ultimately, I think Santa Barbara, Keith, I told you so, was the deeper team. And UCSD also kind of packing it in after they qualified for nationals. Ava Hanna dealing with some injuries and did not play after the team clinched a bid.
And that kind of bit us, I think. But props also to you. You kind of carried us in this contest. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, you talked me out of UCLA in the Southwest Women's. You talked me out of Northeastern in the AC Men's. So I'll take credit for Utah State in the Northwest Men's. I feel like I kind of drove that train, but that. I think you saved us on two of the most important picks here.
What do you think about the results out of the Southwest? Also very windy out there.
Indeed, which I think helps a team like Stanford. Yeah. I think it was pretty clear. Like if it's going to be windy, Stanford's going to be in a good position. So keep that in mind when you're checking the forecast for Milwaukee in a couple weeks. But Davis pulled it together. I'm still unsure with this team because some of the results are good. They came close to getting some even bigger wins, I'd say, on the way. And it's kind of like, oh wow, is this the Davis team we thought we were going to get after the fall? And I don't know down the stretch if that's quite what we ended up with. I mean, they beat UCLA 13-8 in the beginning of the weekend. They almost take down UCSB. I mean, that was their best performance in a loss to UCSB. They lose 13-12, but they had a real shot at winning that game. But then they get demolished by Stanford to get knocked into that last place bracket. I don't know what to make of this Davis team. I want to believe. I was so impressed in the 2021 series. So I want to believe, but I just got to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just see that they have a high ceiling, but they also have the ability to get out schemed. Because I got to be honest, I think Stanford, I'm wondering how much of a big deal it is to have great coaches in this sport, because Stanford is like making me a believer. I mean, this team does not have big star names. They like turned over all of these players over the last couple seasons. It's not like they have nobody on their team, but I mean, it's not, they're not pulling giant prospects from Seattle and just like easily turning them into stars, because that's straightforward. We see plenty of teams do that. No, this team is getting brought together by Robin Davis, Jamie Newer, Amel Abdel-Karim, and Shayla Harris. And this group has this team going from, starting the season kind of ho-hum, losing by 3 to Oregon, losing to Cal, and then they just get better and better over the course of the year. And then they come out and finish second in the region. They crush teams. And yeah, okay, it's windy and they have good zone. Well, everybody else could also learn a good zone. Why are they so effective offensively in the wind? The coaching is unbelievable. The player development is unbelievable in this program. And I don't really know how to project this team out at nationals, to be perfectly honest, but I do not want to face them in my pool. I really don't. Because I think that you are seeing what great coaching can do in Ultimate, which is that you can play way above your pay grade, which, I mean, to be fair, we see this in other college sports. It's not exactly, an unknown thing, but I'm so impressed by what Stanford has done here to finish second.
To your point, I mean, Stanford does have some notable recruits. I mean, Anna Fisher-Lopez, one of the best high school players in the country, back when she was playing in the DC area. But the rest of it is, it is a lot of players who have not played Ultimate before. They always find like a couple of grad students who really have not played Ultimate before and turn them into incredible defenders. They scheme well. They always have not just one zone, but usually like 2 or 3 zones that are good. There's long been one of the best coaching staffs, and just another chance to tip the cap to them, because they continue to do what they do so well in a way that basically no one else has been able to replicate. So all the credit to the Stanford team for another successful run into the postseason. I'll be curious what they can do at nationals. UC San Diego, I think, still probably a step ahead. You give them back Ava Hanna, and you might not get that same result. Hopefully she's healthy. Cross my fingers. Hopefully she's healthy for nationals, because she's a treat to watch. And I think she can make San Diego the best team in this region, or from the Southwest, I guess, at nationals.
Yeah, I mean, nice that she'll get a couple weeks off to get all healed up. How about SLO? After kind of a bad first day at Easterns, they haven't lost a game since then. Beat Tufts, Ohio State, Cal there, crushed everybody in conferences, and then came out and crushed everybody at regionals. I mean, they beat Cal 13-7, Keith, and Cal's pretty good. I'm if you're a Cal Poly SLO fan, you have to feel encouraged by what you've seen from them. And this team, I think, still is a danger to make a semifinal at nationals.
I agree with that. I like the pieces. It's hard not to play the what if game in your head with them a little bit. But with what they've got, I mean, this is still a really talented team with a ton of experience, elite club experience as well. We obviously know that they're well coached. Yeah, we had our friend Pat on here slandering, although he felt bad about it, Cody Mills, but Cody Mills broke whatever curse there is. His team won the region again. So they'll be back in it. And maybe they do that by just avoiding getting in the close matchups. I mean, I feel like that's kind of what undid UCLA. Cal had the advantage by winning that semifinal and being in the front door, but UCLA just had to kind of grind it out. They take a shot from UC Santa Barbara, then they take a shot from UC Santa Cruz. They almost lost that game to go. And that's going to make it tough against a team like Cal, who's a good team coming down from that first place bracket. And that's how they lose 13-10.
Yeah, I just think the depth and polish was there a little bit more for Cal than it was for UCLA. And ultimately, they just didn't have close contests against Cal at regionals. And, it's hard to pinpoint exactly why that is, but Cal, even from the very, very early parts of this season, looked like the team with a much higher ceiling. So I'm going to be fascinated to see what the team can do at Nationals. Andrew Roy is a real terror in the backfield, and I like both of these Southwest teams to have a good tournament.
Me too. I think I'm probably going to be pretty aggressive in picking Slow's fortunes.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to preview the Western Ultimate League Championship Weekend, which is happening in San Diego this Saturday and Sunday. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Deep Look. Western Ultimate League Championship Weekend is coming up this weekend, and we've got a very interesting set of games to come. Because Arizona, as we talked about last week, sneaking into the final spot in Championship Weekend, really had to just hope that things broke their way in a game that didn't involve them, and it did. So they will play Seattle in the semifinals, and Oregon will be taking on San Diego. Super Boom, of course, playing at home, so an interesting wrinkle for the 3 seed. Keith, let's break these games down. Seattle, Arizona. The Tempest getting an 8-point win against the Sidewinders in Arizona earlier this season. Do you see this? Do you see Arizona having a chance in this game?
It's hard to feel like they are not, the David in this story about Goliath. Like they have a lot to overcome. If you run the simulations on that David versus Goliath matchup, 9 out of 10 times, Goliath's going to get the win, right? That's what it feels like here. I mean, Seattle has the best point differential. I was looking at the numbers today. That the 26 they scored in regulation that game, they're the only team to break through 20. They also scored 27 in a later game during the season. They're the only team to break through 20 in regulation. There are 2 teams who did it in that double overtime game between Oregon and LA. But no other team has even scored 20 goals, and they put up 26 and 27 during this season. That is dominance. Yes, they got a challenge in a game that mattered for seeding, but not necessarily for playoff contention between Seattle and Oregon. We've seen Seattle get challenged, but really only by San Diego and Oregon. Arizona wasn't really up to the task. Now that was all the way back in week 1. It's been a long time for Arizona. They've had a lot of chances for growth, but the back half of their season wasn't really that impressive. They haven't won a game since week 1 when they were at home. They've never won on the road. They're going to be playing in San Diego at a neutral site. So they've got a lot to prove.
It's going to be tough sledding. I think the one thing I will say, teams have had time to scout and think about how Seattle has been winning. Here is the thing that I think must happen for teams this weekend to have a chance to upset Seattle, whether that be Arizona or any of the other teams, whoever they may face in the final if they get there. You cannot let them get strike cuts from the handler space into power position. I mean, they just obliterated teams this season with that. I think that's part of the reason their offense was so successful. They can just work amongst their handlers, and they just are so efficient at getting up the line. And you can't let that happen. You just can't let that happen. It's too dangerous of a position for them to be in. I think you have to find ways to generate pressure on their handlers, even if that comes at the expense of them hitting some deep shots against you. But so often their possessions are dink and dunk, handler-driven swings and strikes, and then, they get into the red zone and they score. I mean, it's not exactly exciting big ball offense like Arizona plays. Arizona's got to try to get them to play their style, because if they get into a game where Seattle's getting what they want and lots of handler motion, I would rather see you just do something crazy where you have a last back and you bring another defender up into the box and try to disrupt the reset space. Because, and maybe that means more zone. There's various ways to do this, but you cannot let Seattle get that handler rhythm, or they're just going to pick you apart. The reason they score so efficiently is because they don't turn it over, because they're throwing amongst the handlers the whole point.
It's going to be difficult. And honestly, I mean, they were outplayed on both sides of the disc in their last matchup. And I'm not exactly sure what recipe they have for Seattle, who arguably is the best defense in the league too. I mean, they apply a ton of pressure. They're great at jumping lanes to generate help and poach blocks. So, if you're trying to rush to try and get away from the pressure, they're able to capitalize on that downfield. So, if you're Arizona, a team who arguably is the fastest in the league, playing with that pace and taking your shots might be your best bet, because if you try and play patient and just hit small windows, Seattle's going to jump on that eventually. They're going to get blocks doing that.
They are better at that than you. Don't play their game. Throw it to Cody Lippincott. Honest to God, like put it up. Cody's going to bring it down most of the time. Like their best games have been when Cody Lippincott is scoring like 7 goals.
I think playing in space downfield is going to be their best bet. Jump balls are going to be probably tough against a team as tall as Seattle, but use the speed, use Lippincott, use Maxfield, Cynthia Thomas, use these fast players you have to try and get the discount in space. And, maybe getting that off of fast breaks is the best way to do that. That's so difficult against an offense that doesn't concede possession in fast break situations a lot. So I agree with you. It almost starts with the defense. If you can generate fast break opportunities where you can use that speed to your advantage, then that's a successful potential path for Arizona, but it's a narrow one. They did outscore Seattle in the fourth quarter of their last matchup for
garbage
whatever that's
time.
Worth.
Garbage time.
Arguably garbage time. Yeah. But maybe you look at the tape. How are we getting quick scores? That was kind of a crazy period of time where like both teams were just firing and
non-stop
scoring 3 or 4 throws over and over again. It's wild. So how do we replicate that? Maybe that's all that you can do here.
Seattle minus 4.5. Who are you taking?
That's what I'm going to set the line to. I got to take Seattle there.
Yeah, I think I do too. I will
say we have
Arizona was missing some key players in Utah. Are they going to show up? Are we going to see Ari Nelson? Are we going to see Helen Eifert on the field? If not, they have no chance to win. They have to have their full roster. And if they don't, I just do not think they have enough firepower. Like Ari Nelson creates offense for them. And so, I think I got to take Seattle too.
And Nelson, when Nelson's playing well, has like been one of the other keystones for them playing well. When she's hitting on her deep shots, it opens up the field for all those speedsters, especially on defense. And so they'll need that. But yeah, I like Seattle to cover. Although I will say, I feel like in these championship weekend scenarios that we've seen before, a lot of times the heavy favorites can play a much closer game than we expect.
It's true.
So keep an eye out for that. Sometimes the context makes the
Remember
game
when the Empire were only minus 2.5 on the DraftKings against the Indianapolis Alley Cats? And I was like, this is the hammer of the century. And then the Empire didn't cover the spread.
Well, think of the Atlanta Soul in the first WUL Championship Weekend. Right, they had a pretty unremarkable season. Show up championship weekend, play a classic in an unsuccessful upset bid. I could see Arizona, who has so much to prove. I mean, this is a community that feels like they are often disrespected. They're up against like arguably the golden boy community, the community that everybody is like, oh, you should do this. This is how everybody should be. They are the best. Like, if you are going to get your community energy up to represent your group, I mean, this is how you would do it. This is the opponent you would want to do it against.
They'll have some home fans. They'll have some Arizona fans in attendance. It's not that far to drive from Phoenix to San Diego. I think they'll have some, they'll have more support than Seattle in the stadium. The other thing is they're playing with nothing to lose. Just absolutely nothing to lose. They weren't even supposed to be there. They surely had written themselves out of any opportunity to get in championship weekend. And then like they had this long shot way to get in, and it happened. So, there won't be a lot of pressure on them. Pressure squarely on Seattle to take care of business, but I think they will. Let's
queue up the playlist of all the underdog sports movies you want to watch. Whatever your pick is. Yes. I think I might go with Miracle. Miracle's like a good one for me. So find your underdog movies, your scenes of triumph, and channel it.
Who are? Let's talk about game 2. Oregon Onyx taking on San Diego Super Bloom. San Diego getting a little home field advantage, and the Onyx have had a very impressive season. So, Keith, early thoughts on this game?
Well, San Diego got the win 14-11 at a neutral site game in the second to last week of the season. And so, they would easily be the favorites on the line going to this one. I'd say that, that game was fairly close, maybe even closer than the score indicated, in my opinion. But San Diego not playing with all their best players then. So, if Caleb Helton's back, you got to feel like a pretty comfortable position for San Diego. Now, Oregon did give Seattle their toughest test in week 8. And I think that's the thing. If you're an Onyx fan, that's the piece you want to grab onto is like, look, when we play our best, we could maybe beat Seattle. I mean, if anybody's going to do it, maybe it's us. So they got to get through this really talented San Diego team that can really get on a roll, can generate a ton of blocks. Their O-line can play great defense. Those are going to be challenges for Oregon to overcome. But we've seen them really play a strong season. I mean, Morgan Jajonk, Ali Steinfeld, they've been two of the most productive players in the league this season. So even though it was like coming into this, we were thinking about Claudia Tajima and Julia Sherwood, some of the big names on this Oregon team. I mean, it was the big players, the tallest players who ended up making a big impact for them.
And it's not a surprise. Like, I feel like the pro game lends itself to that bigger action, right? Bigger players having an outsized impact. Obviously, the field size isn't really different, but I feel like the style of play is a little bit different. And I'm not totally surprised to see that. I think the thing for me is, yes, you have to use that game as a data point from Utah, but I think that the level of focus and intensity is going to be a lot different here. Oregon was basically, I don't know if they'd already qualified or they needed one win. I think by the time they played that game against San Diego, they were already in the playoffs. So at that point, it's like, how much motivation was there? That's at least relevant in my mind. I think I expect a close game. I set the line here, San Diego -2.5, and I think I take Oregon with the points. I like Oregon's chances to keep it tight. I think they definitely have a chance to win, but at the end of the day, I do think San Diego will win the game. I think the difference maker is going to be their D-line. Kayla Helton, Krista Pajunas have been so good and just applying consistent pressure. I think their offense is good enough to beat Oregon. Whether it's good enough to win the championship, well, we'll talk about that in just a second. But what do you take on San Diego -2.5, Keith?
I think I would take Super Bloom to cover that line. I think they'll probably win this one by 3 or 4, so not by much. I think you're going to get a really close first half. San Diego maybe taking control in the second half, again, powered by that defense. They've been so impressive, and I think that they have a group that can match up well with these big, effective Oregon cutters.
I'm trying to remember like the scope of the season here. Like what San Diego, what's been the results of their last few games here?
Well, they had that 2-0 weekend against Wild and Onyx during I can't remember exactly what Utah's like tournament weekend was called, a Wild weekend maybe or something like that. They had the 2-0 weekend without Helton, so that was kind of like the tail end. But I mean, they played most of their games in the back half of the season. They went 4-0 in week 6 and week 7, and that pretty much solidified their record after only playing a couple of games in the first 4 weeks of the season.
Right. So Super Bloom lost to Tempest 15-12. So we agree, Keith. Tempest, Super Bloom for your championship.
At this point, yeah, I think that they've been the two strongest teams. Although I think Onyx is in that tier. I think Oregon has a real shot at it.
So, I totally agree. So let's say that is the matchup. Tempest winning 15-12 over San Diego back in early March, week 2 of the season. Seattle -2.5. Once you adjust for
that probably feels about
home
right.
field,
maybe
thoughts on who's going to win the title, Keith?
Oof, it has been just an incredible run for the Seattle team, and a lot of times it doesn't even feel like they're playing their best. So it's boring to take the chalk, but they've just looked fantastic. They look deep too. As Chena Tickham had a great season and Sam Rodenberg, they've been statistically some of their best players. But I feel like even if those players had an off game, or even if they were well defended, even if Christopher Judas is giving Rodenberg the business and they can't get a dish tour, like they have other players who've been able to step up. And that depth for me is what takes Seattle over the top. It lets them run out consistently strong D lines. I think they might just have a little too much talent up and down the roster, even if the top end of this Super Bloom team can match up well with them.
I mean, I think that is definitely the question. Can you get more production out of 5 to 15 than San Diego? And how much does the home field advantage play for San Diego? I think I take Seattle in a close one. I'm not sure I'm not sure on the number. I think I'd probably take San Diego plus 2.5, but it's a borderline call for me.
I think Seattle played 2 home games, I want to say, this whole season. So they're going to be accustomed to playing on the road.
No doubt.
I don't think that's going to really phase them. Although I do agree that it stands a pretty good chance of boosting San Diego.
All right. Well, it all plays out this weekend. You can watch live on the Western Ultimate League YouTube channel. That is going to do it for this edition of Deep Look. Thank you so much for tuning in. Join us for our subscriber bonus segment where we talk about a hypothetical college NIT tournament. So who would win an event that was only for teams that didn't make nationals? We're going to dig into the teams that did not qualify and see if we can pick winners in an NIT type tournament. You can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.